This is episode 155 of the C10 podcast, and this week we're chatting with Jill Corder, the girls golf coach at Blue Springs High School here in the Kansas City area. She happens to be the July Blue KC Coaches with Character honoree. So why are we talking with a high school coach, and what is this Coaches with Character thing? Well, I'm glad you asked. Since 2017, we've had a program in partnership with Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas City and the Kansas City Royals called Coaches with Character. Each year, we recognize 6 coaches who are making Kansas City a better place. This year, we're featuring the coaches on this podcast because who knows better about leadership and building teams, team chemistry, mentoring, etc., than successful high school coaches. Jill Corder has worked in the Blue Springs School District for 25 years and has been the golf coach since 2007. During the past 17 years, she's had an undefeated team that won the Missouri State Championship in 2014. She's had one individual golfer win the state championship, and she's had 5 all-state golfers. All that's well and good, but as Alli Bowers, one of Jill Corder's former golfers and her nominator for the Blue KC Coaches with Character program, wrote, Jill's tireless efforts to create a place where female athletes are respected and loved is her priority. I still remember the love, care, and concern she gave me as a young athlete, constantly encouraging, teaching, and pushing me to be my best self. With that, it's my honor to introduce you to the July Blue KC Coaches with Character honoree, Jill Corder. Welcome to the Sea of the Major League Shed, Coach. How's everything going today?
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, I'm looking forward to talking about coaching and your leadership journey this week, and we'll do it in about 10 questions or so, but before that, we like to start these with what we call pregame batting practice, just a chance to get to know you a little bit better. So here we go. Question number 1. My hero growing up was?
That would be my dad. And then my brother's real close right behind him.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. So I have to kind of ask, because we oftentimes, and we hope people will say a parent, a mom or a dad. You might be the first one, and I've been doing these. I mean, this is, like I said, this is episode 155, and I've done more of these. You might be the first person to actually say a sibling is the hero.
I kind of had a different childhood upbringing. I have a brother that's 13 months older, and then a brother that's 4 years younger. And when I was 8 years old, my parents divorced. And so we grew up in a farming community, and my dad's family, mom's family were all farmers. And so, as was my father. And so we grew up on a house in Richmond, Missouri on 30 acres and had farm ground. And so when they divorced, that was the thing back then. You just automatically went with your mother for some, I don't know. She brought us to the city. And it was just horrible, 8, 9-year-old and 5-year-old. And so we ended up living with my dad ultimately. And so my dad, he sacrificed everything to raise us. And then married a gal later that was like our little angel in life. So anyways, we all took care of each other. Everybody had to help out and do their part on the farm. I kind of became the family cook and caretaker at age 9. Oh. And so we had this special bond, my dad and my 2 brothers, that just is really special. And both my brothers were incredible athletes and state champions of their own. My brother that was a year older was multiple state champion wrestler and high school All-American. And I was a natural athlete too. And, felt I had to be just as good as he. And he was super humble, super smart. And I just, he was a hero to me and my dad too.
That's cool. Very cool. All right. Question number 2. If I could have one superpower as a leader, it would be?
Well, in working with girls, I'd probably say, and golf, I'd probably say if I could get into their minds and read their minds and see what they're thinking and their mental process of what they're doing, probably also with girls, if I could take away insecurities, I would do that in a heartbeat. Some of these things I just don't even understand what brings them down, and or their, self-image. And if I could fix those things and read minds, that'd be awesome.
Right. I think guys have probably thought that over the years too.
Yes,
it reminds me of that movie,
right.
What Women Want, with Mel Gibson and Helen Hunt, but
That's right.
it can be dangerous at the same time, I think. So. Question number 3, the thing that motivates me every day is?
My relationships that I have with my students. Not everyone you can reach when you've got 200 a day. But I have kids that eat lunch with me every day, and you just get to a different level that, as well as my own kids. My husband and I are both older parents, and we have 14-year-old twins, a son with autism, severe autism, which, I've never had to deal with in my entire life. So that was a life-changing thing, but that's got to motivate you to keep rolling.
Oh, exactly. And then question number 4, if I could meet one person in history, it would be?
I'd have to say Jesus Christ.
There you go.
Can you imagine?
No. One day.
I hope so.
Yes. Well, to kick things off, let's go back a couple years. Tell me about 17-year-old Jill Corder.
Oh my. Well, I felt like I was living my best life in small town. I tried to involve myself in everything through school, anything sports related. In the fall, we didn't have volleyball or softball. They got it soon after I left, but we only had golf or tennis. And just as an athlete going into high school, I didn't know what I was going to do. But I knew I was going to do one of those two things, and the golf coach approached me. So I'm like, okay, let's give this a try. So I played golf, was a successful basketball player there, and then ran track. And then in the summers, I swam on the club swim team and played softball. I was just super competitive, again, working on the farm, everybody pitching in to do their part, and never really was a dull moment. Sure didn't sit around on our phones or social media. That was allowed. It was fun. My brother, again, a year older, was leaving to go to the University of Iowa to wrestle, and
oh, wow.
Dreams of following him. Thought I would get into sports medicine or physical therapy. Once I got to Iowa, go from this small town to this big place, I kind of realized that maybe, even though I was one of our 5 valedictorians, once I got up there to school, I thought, I'm not sure I really like this school stuff too much. Made it through, had a wonderful time at school, and then the real world hits you. Adulting.
Yeah, exactly. So did you stay at Iowa all 4 years?
Yeah. In fact, I was there a little bit longer. I was so fortunate and got a job at the University of Iowa Hospital in the orthopedic clinic, and they offered me a full-time job so I could get residency there in the state of Iowa for school. So I sat out for a year and a half and worked, and had a great 5 years. I worked there in the orthopedic clinic. So
when did things change career-wise for you? When did you decide that, hey, I want to go into teaching and coaching?
Well, I always thought coaching. I kind of had I don't know, back then, and I was at small town. My coaches, I had a different coach every year in basketball, and golf. I had the same coach who was amazing, but that was a big deal in having somebody different. My 8th grade year, I didn't, I just go out for basketball, not ever having played before. And I think they just threw a tall gal in there to coach us. So I don't know that she never played. And it kind of seemed that way for a while. My senior year had an incredible gal come in. She was a record setter at William Jewell, and came in as our coach and learned so much just from basics. And so I always thought, gosh, I'd like to be a positive influence on kids like she's been with us, and a consistent, person for them to go to. And so I decided my junior year in college, I think that's what I want to do, coach
Oh,
and teach. So I started off in elementary for 6 years and then realized I can't really coach getting out of school at 4 o'clock. So
that's cool though, because I hate to point out the obvious, but you know, teachers and coaches don't quite make as much money as
no,
people in the medical field where you're headed.
no. And I wasn't even thinking about that then,
Yeah.
money, no, being made. I just thought,
But it seems like you're doing what you're
yeah.
supposed to be doing.
Oh, it's been a fun ride.
So what did you learn about yourself early in your teaching and coaching journey? And especially about the way you want to lead others.
Oh man. I learned from my dad again, where he's got these three young kids. He had very little patience. So he would snap, and I think I kind of grew up and was that way with very little patience. And I definitely have grown in that area. And then, of course, when we have our son who with autism, you talk about you have to have patience. But I really grew with that and just empathy. And nowadays, there are so many kids that have trauma or come in here with trauma that as long as you're informed of it's so important to have that empathy and do what you can to help and provide a safe space.
Yeah, you know, we talked about this before we started recording, but when I'm talking to people about students, I have to harken back often to COVID in 2020, and
Yeah.
it seems like that was those 18 months, 2 years, whatever it was, depending on the school district. It seems like that was really kind of a tipping point for changing the way students act in school, the way teachers approach school, et cetera, et cetera. Have you seen that as
Oh
well?
my goodness. You are exactly right. A tipping point. And we aren't back.
Mm.
And I don't think we'll ever get back fully.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Even as far as accountability, I mean, it's getting better every year. And I was in middle school teaching during that time and have moved to the actual high school building the last couple of years. And so even I'm seeing some of those kids that I had in middle school at that time now. And it's just been a slow process. But I think mentality from top down, things changed.
Mm-hmm.
And, trying to get back to high expectations and just kids being accountable. It definitely was not a good thing for anybody.
What's been the key, or what do you think is the key to getting back to that accountability piece and the high expectations, and each of us as adults, and then each of us as students getting back to high expectations of ourselves?
Well, in the classroom, consistency is a must. Letting the kids know that you do have high expectations and holding them accountable, even though, there's excuses, and trying to have some empathy, because there are some kids that are going through things that you wouldn't even believe that we've got now. And when you've got 30 in every class, every 45 minutes, a new one coming in, you feel like that's a more important part of your teaching than actually, teaching the curriculum, which you've got to do as well. But it's tough. But just trying to be consistent, and our giant building that we've got, try to be consistent across the board. It's tough.
Yeah. Kind of hit me as we're talking here. So I've mentioned this on the podcast before that our youngest graduated last year. So in 23.
Yeah.
That right? Yeah. He graduated in 23. He'll be a sophomore in college this year. And I'll never forget, he came once they went back to school, and in his school district, I think they were basically 2 semesters they were online, and then the third semester was kind of optional, I think, whether you want to be online or in person. And they, went back to in person. When they went back to in person that first fall, which I think was his junior year at that point, he came home one day and he was talking about how the freshmen were just crazy, out of control. And we talked about it. He said, but Dad, think about this. At the shutdown in our school district, it's kindergarten through six is elementary, seventh, eighth is middle school, and then ninth and above.
Yeah.
He said, think about this. He said, when COVID started, they were in sixth grade, they were in elementary school, and they basically skipped middle school and they went straight to high school.
So they're acting like middle schoolers.
Exactly. And I think that's the age now that they're graduating here in this 24-25 school year.
Yes, that's exactly right. And that was good that he could point that out.
He did.
That was very observant.
They're just crazy.
Give him a little bit of slack.
Yeah, exactly.
This is J.R. Buckner, President and CEO of First Federal Bank of Kansas City. We hope you're enjoying this week's conversation. For this week's Student Spotlight, I'd like you to meet one of the students in our C10 Mentoring and Leadership Program.
My name's Elijah North, and I go to Lincoln College Prep. C10 is making an impact on my life by helping me build more confidence and exposing me to more relationships like my mentor, who really helped me and guide me through life so far.
First Federal Bank of Kansas City is proud to make a donation this week to the Post-High School Scholarship Fund for seniors in the C10 Mentoring and Leadership Program. If you'd like to join us in this effort to give our future leaders an opportunity after high school, please click on the link in the show's notes. Now back to this week's conversation.
How has your coaching style changed over the years?
It kind of changes based on your kids you've got. When we had that year of 2014 where we won the state championship, I had girls that came into the program that had played and were very competitive and played outside the season and, had this desire, this competitive drive to reach the top. And, with golf, you just can't do that in a short 6-week season. You have to do more. And then the majority of the girls that we have come out for golf have never played a lick of golf, even in, the largest school in the state.
Mm-hmm.
The athletes that are coming out, they can choose between volleyball and softball and tennis and cross country. So we have a very small team of typically 10 to 12 girls that some of them we've just begged to get out, so that we can try to teach you in
Right.
4 years. Again, patience definitely comes with that territory. And as a super competitive person myself, I've had to let go of that. If this is just something fun for them to be involved with, I get, and great, we'll take you. We want you, and I just have to come to terms with that's what most of them are doing. And that's okay. Just to be a part of a team, be a part of something. And then those that are really, pushing themselves, they're getting out and working. And so it's sometimes a little bit of a roller coaster ride.
So what's the key then for you in putting together a team?
With high school golf, we have no officials. We have no referees out there, and everyone in tournaments and competitions, they have to be accountable for their score, the correct strokes, which is a huge issue. Sadly, it is. I get so frustrated every year, and sometimes I'm just like, why are we out here competing if we can't, I'm hardcore on integrity, and I will help you count your strokes. We've got to get you there. But if you can't count your strokes correctly, I can't play you on a varsity competition. But that's not the way it is all the way around. I've even sadly had to disqualify one of my own kids before because of continued not counting strokes correctly, and not to, be a mean person as that. And I've had girls come back and tell me, thank you for doing that. Or I'll have best friends on the team, and one comes to me, she is not going to take my spot. She's not counting her strokes correctly, but she won't say that to her teammate. That is a huge thing to me that has to come along. But again, with golf, you try to play your top 5 would be your varsity. A most of the time our 4 and 5 spot, we kind of rotate people through. And then when we get toward the postseason play, we'll have playoffs and things like that. But I try to give everybody that's close in there with scores definitely a chance to play varsity, and then come up with our top 5, our lowest scoring girls by the postseason play.
So with all that in mind, and the integrity and what you're wanting to teach them, where does culture fit into all this? Not just from you, but even from the girls as they get older in school.
Well, that's one of the core values that we try to also talk about, is being a great teammate, having a teachable spirit, mental toughness, having confidence. And I try to alleviate some of those things by being positive. And, some girls you have are so competitive. Our last all-state gal that graduated 2 years ago, she's playing college golf now, but she would get so angry. And, you got to come together as a team. And I try to take pressure off her. The pros have rough shots. It's part of the game. And I was probably like that as a player too, just so competitive and expect so much out of yourself. So I try to take pressure off in that way and come together, do functions. One of our team bonding activities before we actually start school is to go to Top Golf and have a practice there, and, just bond. We do an overnight tournament at the Lake of the Ozarks, and that's a great, great bonding time. And if they have a rough season but enjoy their time that they've spent with us, then to me, that was an accomplishment.
Yeah. So you mentioned your core values, and I think you touched on them there, but I mean, we have a wide variety of people listening to this podcast. And I think anybody, whether they're in leadership at a business, leadership at a church, or retired, or whatever it might be, these core values can apply to all of us. So what are your team's core values? What are the things that you're trying to teach to your golfers?
Well, every year in their little packet I give them with our schedule and our handbook and everything, I put just a little bulleted list of things that make or standards for athletes on great teams, including integrity, having a teachable spirit, good work habits, confidence, pride in your team, a focus on academics, which is really big with us because when we compete in a tournament, it's during the school day. So they're missing a day a week of school right from the start of the school year. Mental toughness, try to incorporate that. And then just selflessness and being a great teammate. Golf is pretty much an individual sport, but when you come together as a team and encourage one another, there's just so much to gain from that.
We hope all coaches do this. And I certainly think, I'm biased, but as I've gotten to know our coaches with character honorees over the last 6 or 7 years, you're not overly, you want the wins and you want the championships and you want them to do well, but ultimately it's about what they turn into, isn't it?
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
Those core values are things that they're going to be able to apply in college or during their post-high school years.
Yes. And I think right now with all the influences our young people have on them with social media and everything else, and I feel like, we're kind of living in a selfish world, basically. I don't know. I've evolved in coaching that let's make this a positive experience, enjoy ourselves. If you're not the world's greatest golfer, that's okay. I talked about in my little interview with Blue Casey about having to bring out perspective sometimes of let's stop for a second when we're, having a mental breakdown on the course and just put things in perspective. It's okay. Who cares? We all have bad rounds. It's okay. You can get through this. There's just a lot that go into it. And I love being with our small group of girls and creating relationships by trying to be positive and not making, if you don't win this, or if you don't have your lowest score, if they stick with this, they are 100% going to show improvement. And have those positive expectations from them. So.
I mean, you definitely, you can be a scratch golfer and you're still gonna have a bad day.
Yes. And sometimes that's really hard for some of our girls to understand.
Oh yeah. I think it's sometimes hard for adults to understand.
Yes,
on the
it
course.
is.
So what are you most proud of from your career so far?
The relationships I have. I was floored by Alli in this nomination. And I definitely don't feel deserving. Honestly, when we won the state championship, I had nothing to do with that other than trying to keep them from mentally crashing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I take no credit for that. That's all built year round. And again, with golf, it's not like we can go play golf in the winter here in Missouri, or they have to put time in and do what that takes. So that was a proud moment, but my proudest is so many girls that I still have relationships with. Alli's having her third kid, and I still get together with many of them for lunch and keep in touch. And that's everything to me.
That's awesome. Well, as we come down to the last couple of questions here, one of our C words that I equate to you is compassion. And I thought about this before the interview, and then it's really come out, I think, over these last few minutes. But in our C in the Major Leagues vernacular, a leader that shows compassion is someone who puts others first, shows mercy, is willing to suffer with others, meets others where they are, and expresses love for those in need. What does that word compassion mean to you in leadership and in coaching?
Oh, I think that word and that characteristic is more important now than ever. We talked about this before we went on air, just about so many kids and what they've gone through and what they're going through right now, and teenagers. And it's hard. It's hard for me in our generation to sometimes grasp. Well, it is. I don't understand the social media thing. I don't understand how you can let that have such an impact on your self-awareness and security, but it does. And understanding what they have going on outside of our little time together in golf, it's huge. It's critical. Mm-hmm. You know, I try to gain a close bond with families, and, you know, we'll have grandparents pass away and parents going through cancer. And I mean, you can't get through with positive relationships if you don't have some compassion on what's going on in lives of each individual. And that's much easier for me to be involved in their lives when I have 10 or 12 players versus, 150 football players.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I hope that they feel that I have that compassion, even though sometimes, you get fiery as a coach. Mm-hmm. Try to push them.
Exactly. So finally, I asked you earlier about 17-year-old Jill Quarter. If you could go back today, what would you tell her?
Oh my, hang on. It's going to be a wild ride. Keep doing what you're doing. Take one day at a time and appreciate all the things you've got.
Jill, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for how you're influencing, it's not just the golfers that are on your teams, but obviously students there through the Blue Springs School District. So thank you so much for that. And again, congratulations on being honored as a Blue KC Coach with Character.
Thank you so much. And thanks for having me. This has been just an unbelievable honor, and thank you for everything.
Well, that does it for this episode of the C10 Mentoring and Leadership Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, we hope that you'll leave a favorable review on your favorite podcast platform. If you didn't enjoy it, or you have other comments or suggestions for potential guests, you can click on the comment link in the show's notes. Be sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss an interview. And if you or your company would like to help underwrite this podcast, let me know. Until next time, this is Matt Folks for the See You in the Major Leagues Foundation saying be safe and take care.